All right, Shawn, today's video, let's do something a little bit different. Let's talk about the best golf drills that we've ever done. When I say we, I mean that you've done for your game, that I've done for my own personal game, because everybody out there, your game is the most important game in the world, right? So it's what helps you the best, what helps each one of us the best, that really makes it the best drill. If it doesn't work for you, it's not the best drill. So we're gonna share some personal information about the best drills that we've ever done. Shawn, let's just use you as an example first, right?
Okay.
You've been playing this game probably for 75 years, right?
Yep, approximately.
And you've had a lot of instructors, right? And you've played at a pretty high level, and you've seen things that work for your swing, that don't work for your swing. So let's first kind of describe your game.
Oh, okay. So, like currently?
No, well, at the time you kind of found the drill we're going to talk about.
Not really, kind of self-taught. My dad was a scratch golfer.
Okay.
A club champion at the club I grew up at, up in Maine. Taught me how to grip it, and he knew enough. He watched me enough to know what I was doing wrong when I got off track, but he didn't. He wasn't a golf teacher. So I went and started studying books and magazines, right?
Yep.
And I didn't really have my first official golf lesson, maybe until I got a little bit older. I was in Florida on vacation and took a lesson from Phil Ritson.
So you were already good.
It was pretty good.
What kind of scores were you shooting?
I was 16, maybe 16. I was already the club champion at I was the club champ at my course that I grew up at.
Just self-taught.
Yep, pretty much. I had a good little short game, like a lot of kids. Hit it far enough.
Right.
Hooked it around the course.
Right.
And wanted to get better, so I went and saw Phil Ritson. It was a treat because I had already had his VHS tape. My dad had bought me the VHS tape because Phil Ritson was like the grandfather of Ledbetter and all these other guys, proverbially, whatever. He was one of the first teachers to make a really be a godfather. And so I ended up getting a lesson from Phil Ritson, and he's like, I could tell you're a good player, but you need work on the backswing. And I'm thinking, I came to Florida from Maine to work on my backswing.
You don't hit the ball in the backswing.
Yeah, full circle. It's pretty much all I teach now. So he videoed my swing, which I don't think I'd ever really. I'd seen it, but not for a little while.
Not in that detail, yeah.
And he drew lines. And he went through his little teaching routine where he had his playing lines, and basically said, your club is way out of position on the backswing, so it's causing you to have all these compensations. And I said, well, how do I fix it? And he's like, well, you're going to do a wall drill. I said, okay, well, how do I do it? He's like, well, you're going to stand up against a wall. He's like, you might want to use an old head cover and tape it.
Right.
So let me just grab one here. I would take a head cover like this, and tape it around the club. Right. And then I would stand about a foot from the wall. Right. And I would go back, and the first 10,000 times I did it, I hit the wall. He's like, don't hit the wall, basically. So that was my drill, was to figure out how to go up away from the wall and then touch it coming down. So it taught me early to go up a little steeper and then a little bit of shallowing move. And
it's that loop that we talk about in other videos that works away from the target line going into the top.
I mean, I did that for months. Yeah. To the point where, first I did it with my eyes open and I would check where it was. And then I did enough, I bet I did it 5,000 times with my eyes closed until I figured out how to go up it without touching it and then come down it, touching it, and then back away again. And that drill still is probably the reason I ended up having a pretty good looking golf swing.
Yeah, I think any swing I've ever seen of yours from any point in your playing career, that backswing, that club's coming right through the hands as it goes up. Yeah. And it's really an envious spot for a lot of golfers to want to be in, and you contribute that drill to. Yeah,
that's one of them. Is I had a tendency to whip it inside early, and I just kind of kept it away from the wall, and lo and behold, the thing started going up on plane. Now I had to make some adjustments over the years, probably a little bit, because it may have got me a little bit too steep, but it fixed the number one problem for me, which was banging the wall and over. So, you know, a lot of you try to get too complicated with what you're doing. I mean, that was the most basic drill, and I still think about it.
Yeah.
You know, it was 30, 25 something years ago, something like that.
Have you ever had any trouble shallowing the club since then?
No, none. Almost over shallow it.
So a drill that works in this section really forced you, or really allowed you to shallow the club much later.
Yeah, and it gave me some, you know, it's a really good drill. If you guys haven't done it, you kind of stay away from the wall and then touch it and slide down the wall. I mean, it teaches you that little motion without having to overthink. You just kind of use the feedback of the wall.
Right.
And to me, that drill could help anybody because it keeps the club a little more out in front of you. It doesn't allow you to even suck the hands behind you because you're going to bang the wall again. You know, that one there really can help a lot of people. Yeah. So that was one that you did that I did away from the golf course.
Okay.
So,
yeah, it's a great point. Some of these drills we're going to talk about aren't driving range drills necessarily.
I didn't do that ever at the driving range, and it changed my swing.
It's hard to find a wall in the driving range.
Yeah, and so I nicked up some walls at first until I started taping the head cover, but so that one helped me, number one. And then I had another one years later that I got from, I think I got it from David Ledbetter.
Okay.
It was, you know, that got me on track as far as the backswing, but I didn't have the dynamics part of it. So I would set up on the range, and I knew that I wanted to get the club here. Mm-hmm. Kind of basically almost fully set, left arm parallel, right? With the butt of the club pointed somewhere near the target line. So I knew if I could get there with a little pressure on my right foot, from there I could just react. I could finish the swing and let my athleticism take over, because I was a baseball player too, so I was good at making, you know, some motion.
Making that stretch move, yeah.
So I would hit a lot of balls setting up here, finish, and hit. Because that, to me, was the key to the whole game, is if I could make this, and for you too at home, if most of the problems in the swing happen in the first 2 feet.
Yeah.
Ledbetter said it years ago. He even went so far to say, if you go back into the 90s, he had a magazine article, he called it the swing of the future.
I remember that, yeah.
He said that somebody someday would start from here and play golf, and they would hit it from there.
You know,
right?
it's funny, we talking about this a little while ago, that Victor Hovland
He hit a
will
drive
do that in
a couple
tournaments.
weeks ago.
Yeah, he does it a lot in tournaments.
He said he hits it farther that way.
Yeah.
So he maybe gets some extra
So it's a
stretch
little bit
from
of
it.
foreshadowing from Ledbetter to see here in almost 2020 now. There's guys out there at the highest level of the game doing that.
And the guy was brilliant. So, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it helped me with my pressure too, because when you do this, you're naturally not going to get on your left side here.
Right.
And you're not going to make a really poor pivot. You're going to get set kind of what feels strong to move.
Yes.
So I would naturally get a little more pressure on my right foot earlier in the backswing when I did this. So when I did go, I could recenter and go. I didn't know it back then because I didn't have any of this really cool technology we have.
Once golfers, so when we were doing live lessons, in-person lessons, once a golfer kind of gets the concept of, you know, that throwing motion, that move, and to really dial in the timing of that, we'll have them do a lot of that. Take it right here, set it, and as the club moves, you're shifting. And it's a great way to really kind of polish that idea.
Yeah. So I mean, if you guys at home are struggling with this first 2 feet, you know, practice until you can, and the wall drill will help, practice until you can, without even looking, just swing it back there and stop. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've just trained myself over the years. I can do this with my eyes closed. I can point this thing dead on the target line literally every single time with my arms in front of me. So if you can get there and practice getting there on the range, you can even have a little laser. Mm-hmm. I know Scott
flashlight,
Hamilton likes it as a laser. Get it pointed somewhere near the target line, a little pressure on your right foot. From there, just stop, and then finish the rotation as you recenter and go. You can start to bleed that into your real swing. Because like I said, the problems happen in the first 2 feet. A lot of you suck it in, you take it out, you reverse pivot.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or you kind of early extend on the backswing. So you can get all those things in place. And what's going to happen, you probably start hitting it way better from there than you do with your normal swing if you're practicing enough. And then you finally blend it all together.
And what's interesting to me listening to you describe this is that the two best drills that have helped your swing the most, one happened here, one happened right here. Very similar time frames in the golf swing, And, you know, we hear this a lot with the pros that we work with. There's not a lot of guys that the trigger for them or the key for them is a downswing thought.
Yeah.
It's not a downswing drill. It's usually an early backswing drill.
Yeah, because it's just a time frame. Doesn't allow much thought process. You may have something in early transition.
Kind of a thought, right?
And maybe, you know, I've had feels over the
Right,
years
exactly.
down here, you know, maybe more release or hold off, but the stuff that has helped me the most consistently is getting the back swing plane correct and the body motion correct, and wherever that kind of pressure weight is, early in the swing.
All right, so if your game sounds familiar to Shawns, give these drills a try, and they will certainly tighten up the backswing and make the downswing that much easier.
Okay, Mike, now it's your turn. So we're talking about the drills, our best drills, ones that have helped us the most. What's your best drill?
So I grew up playing basketball, football, right? Not too relatable to swinging a golf club, right? So when I would learn to play the game, and very similar upbringing as far as my dad was a really good player, played in college. That's how I learned to play the game, but he wasn't a teacher, so he's seen my swing more than anybody. So when it would get off, he would say, all right, something in that part of the swing doesn't look right. And I would go kind of figure it out, read up and whatever. But he would just go by the look of the swing being off. So one of the things that I kind of learned just from other sports was really dynamic shift, really dynamic backswing, big backswing. But in doing all that, I had no concept for how the hips moved, right? They would just work level, kind of hang out up here, get some runoff, and then a really big move. And I had a lot of club head speed, but I didn't have any idea how to kind of rein it in and make it work for me. Could hit a lot of low lofted clubs really well, but as far as the scoring clubs, that's not a great way to play, obviously.
Exactly.
So one of the best drills I got from one of the best coaches I worked with, Scott Hamilton. He's worked with me for a number of years before we ever started AMG, back when we were both playing. He had me take the club back and really feel this left hip get lower in the backswing. This is way before gears, we could measure any of this. He just saw the level hip turn, the overswing and all that. The idea was there wasn't much turn. Of course there was, because I was overly turned. The idea was to get this hip lower and then have it go down even lower to start the downswing. What that did, I had no idea it was doing this, but what that did was it really kind of gave a very dynamic endpoint to my top of the backswing. So it really tightened up my top of the backswing, really got the club coming down much more consistently. Now the benefit of that was my, say, 7-iron on down game, 7-iron through the wedges really went up and got a lot better. I still kept the speed, but now my trajectory control, my distance control was much better because of learning how this hip should work, really kind of end of backswing, start of downswing, and then the rest of it, you just kind of did what I did.
How would you practice that on the range to incorporate it? Were you going slow? Were you stopping?
No, 100% slow. So what he had me do was hold a club right here at first.
Okay.
And then first move away, he wanted to see this thing moving down early. So for me, it felt like this because I was a guy that did this, right? So we'll face the camera here. So it was start way, getting that tilt early, and then getting it going down even a notch lower. And you see this with all those great ball strikers now that we have gears. This center of the mass, the center of the hips go down right in the transition. I had this and almost an upward move of it, which we see a lot of golfers do trying to generate speed.
Absolutely.
So it was just a really raw motion that had no refinement, and he showed me how to really refine that.
And sometimes that's all it takes. Talking about my drills, they weren't really complicated.
Right,
But
very simple.
sometimes the most simple stuff is the best. And I've heard Butch Harmon say before, less is more. It really is. And if you guys are working on too many things in your game at once, I think that's a mistake. It's like pick one thing that you really want to iron out, find a simple drill that you can feel the change with, and do it enough until it's done. Don't jump from tip to tip to tip. If you know your lower body motion is bad, work on that until you can feel the motion. You may need to make some club changes in there too to go along with that because we know how things work together. But at least have a plan and stick to it with 1 or 2 basic drills.
Well, what I learned more probably from Scott than anything that's valuable to me today, as I'm teaching way more than I'm playing, is the simplicity of it and looking for that canter, that string that you can cut out of the golf swing or pull on the swing that affects many things rather than, he didn't go and try to fix all this because he knew the problem was happening much sooner. So we fixed this, then this started to tighten up, and then the downswing started to clean up. So he really knew through his experience what to kind of hone in on right off the bat. And it was a simple thing to do.
Yeah, and it's cause and effect teaching. And I mean, if you're working with somebody now, that's the kind of teacher you need to be with. They're looking for the one thing that'll change 4 or 5 things,
Right.
instead of trying to change everything. Because if you can find that one thing, and a lot of times, you know, you want to look at the ground up, inside to out. So was the lower body motion working good?
Right.
Right, and then how do the arms look, and then finally maybe how does the club look? In that order most of the time, because a lot of these poor body motions will affect the club. And yeah, you can be doing some things with the club that can get you, the body motion off track, but I think if you stick to this kind of like, let me figure out the pivot, let me get the arm movements, those movements control the golf club. I think that's a good way in general to go about looking at the swing and making changes.
Yeah, look at these things in the order they happen. You're really going to see the blueprint for correcting things. Right? A bad impact doesn't happen because you made a bad impact. It happens way before that because you had to make a bad impact.
It might happen at address.
Right. So in your case, you cleaned up just the first few feet off the swing. I cleaned up what this was doing right off the bat, and it really improved impact. And I know a lot of golfers will look, they'll send us swings and for online lessons, and one of the first things we'll ask is, tell me about your game. And they'll reply with 7 swing faults that they think they're making, right? And none of those are really the cause of that motion.
Right.
It's all just kind of things we see when we look at a video. We all have our own kind of biases and egos when we look at our own swings on video, and we say, I don't like the way that looks, I don't like the way that looks. So we start focusing on all these little sidetracks, all these little mosquitoes, and we're missing the bear that's sitting in the room causing all that.
No, there's no doubt. So here's a couple drills that we use to help us. I think they'll probably help your game if you have some similar issues. So keep working on your game. Pick a couple of drills from our membership site if you're not already a member.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got 400 and something videos in there with drills for every part of your game. Look at the problem in your swing that's causing you issues. Go ahead and try some of those drills. You're going to find 1 or 2 that you really like that connect with you.
And let us know in the comments below the drill that's helped you the most, because we're always looking for new drills to help students. So if you've got something, there's a good chance we haven't heard of it, and we'd love to know how it's helped you. If you found this video helpful and you need more help with your consistency, we want to help you with that. Go to the first comment below this video. You'll see a link. It's our first pinned comment. There'll be a link in there. Click on that link. We'll take you to our #1 consistency drill to help you hit the ball more solidly and more consistent every time you're out on the course.